travel back to 2000 BC and we're looking down at probably the most famous Stone Age monument in the world, Stonehenge. From up here it's pretty obvious why it's so well known. But just up the road, in the small village of Avebury, there's a stone circle that's even older and even bigger. The beautiful chalk landscape around Avebury in Wiltshire has been shaped by man over 5,000 years. The area is one of the most spectacular prehistoric monuments in the world. Yet it's still a mystery why it was built. We're searching for some of the answers.
You can see how massive it is compared to Stonehenge, can't you?
Absolutely enormous.
Yeah.
Dave, what's a boring statistic? How wide is it?
Bank to bank, it's a good bit more than 400 metres. It's 425, 420, something like that. Pretty damn big, I think.
Oh my goodness, look at this.
Isn't that amazing?
Wow.
The sheer scale of it is fantastic, isn't it?
And we're just completely surrounded in stones in all directions. These mighty megaliths were hoisted upright over 4,000 years ago. Little is known about life in the Neolithic or Late Stone Age, but these massive stones, some weighing up to 60 tons, must have been significant for the people then. I'd love to visualise what it looked like in Neolithic times. It wouldn't have all this grass, presumably the chalk would be white.
It wouldn't be white for very long, though. I don't think it would take that long for weeds and grass to colonise. And it's probably only half the size that it would have been when it was originally dug. So
it looks impressive now.
But what it must have been.
What it must have been like when it was fresh.
And it would have been almost surrounding the whole skyline.
You're right, it would have been this great white ring when it was fresh.
Like a sort of amphitheatre.
Oh, much bigger than any amphitheatre.
The Romans ever produced.
Yeah. But what went on inside it? That's the
There are Neolithic monuments scattered over 5 square miles of this landscape. So the best way to see the geography of it all is from above. The stone circle and earthwork are a very obvious feature in this landscape, as is an avenue heading south from the circle, made up of pairs of standing stones. We've got the circle, and then we've got all these other stones running down to the south.
Yeah, well, you've got the West Kennet Avenue, which...
Oh, that's the avenue, is it?
Yeah.
Look, what's that over there? Those 2 stones.
That's the long stones, Adam and Eve. Eve's got quite a lean to her on the left-hand side.
Adam and Eve are 2 more standing stones, a mile west of Avebury. They also date back from the Neolithic period and are important because they stand where something really intriguing has been spotted from the air.
One of the reasons we've come here, though, is so that I can, well, show you this photograph.
That must be the Adam and Eve stones there.
That's absolutely right. But can you see? We've got this thin, dark line curving through between the stones, coming all the way around.
You can just see it.
Yep.
Oh, yes.
And it's building up an intriguing little puzzle for us here. Because, of course, on the ground, all you see are a couple of stones standing in the middle of an empty field.
There were tantalising signs of a large feature in the same field as Adam and Eve. What could it be? I went to the local museum to find out more from archaeologist Josh Pollard. What have you got here?
A rather fine book which was written by this man here, Dr. William Stukeley, who was active in recording many of the Avebury monuments back in the 1720s. At the time, they were undergoing a process of destruction
They're in this
at
book?
the hands of local farmers who had broken up many of the stones.
Right.
And so this is actually a very important record for understanding the nature of Avebury when it was in a far better state than it is even today. This is Stukeley's view of the Avebury complex as it might have been when it was...
I mean, it's nothing like it's visible from the air. OK, you can see the circular feature from the air and this avenue, but what about this one?
This is a second megalithic avenue, Stukeley's Beckhampton Avenue, which he thought ran from the western entrance of Avebury.
So William Stukeley said there's a whole new avenue that's not there today?
That's right. This is a view of the remains of Stukeley's Avenue, as he recorded it in 1724.
Who's that there?
That's actually William Stukeley himself, who's sat on top of a long barrow with his sketch pad, producing this marvellous panorama or prospect of the course of the avenue.
I saw some stones from the air. Are they the same ones?
That's right.
As in the Adam and Eve?
That's right. Those two stones still survive, but these other stones that he's drawn in, mostly fallen, have long since disappeared.
In Stukeley's day, only a few stones existed, but by joining the dots, he saw them as an avenue of paired stones. But was he reading too much into what he saw? Was there really another avenue stretching across the landscape, or was it just a figment of his imagination? This is what can be seen of the Neolithic monuments surrounding Avebury today. The Circle, the existing West Kennet Avenue, and Adam and Eve. If William Stukeley was right, there was another avenue leading out from the stone circle over the chalkland to the southwest. Stukeley said his avenue included Adam and Eve and crossed the area where the crop mark was seen. Could this be the key to Stukeley's avenue? Mark Gillings has been investigating. Stukeley thought this stone was part of the avenue.
He did. He was emphatic about that, yeah. But one stone maketh not an avenue. So when we came we came out to excavate and look at another feature here, an enclosure feature we identified on the aerial photograph.
Yeah, we've seen that from the air, yes.
Yes, yeah, which is a beaut. But we thought while we were digging it, it would be really interesting just to open up a little hole a little bit bigger to see whether the avenue existed.
It was really there?
Yeah, so we dug a hole just out this a ways, and lo and behold, running through stones of what we now know to be Stukeley's Avenue.
Marching back towards Avebury?
Heading off the field that a ways, yeah.
Roughly how big was it?
The stones themselves were not as big as Eve. The stones we discovered were about yay high and so wide.
So somewhere in these back gardens and fields lies a long-forgotten avenue. Mark and his team have found strong evidence that Stukeley's Avenue exists, at least as far as Adam and Eve. But does the avenue run on even further, as Stukeley described? This year, Mark and his team are trying to discover just that. Why are we actually digging here?
Right, yes, it's a good question. We've got a square laid out in the middle of an empty field. But what we think is that the avenue is actually running slap bang down the middle of the trench we've laid out there.
So those Adam and Eve stones are sort of over the hedge there, are they?
Yeah.
Presumably it's a bit of a needle in a haystack, isn't it?
It is, given the scale of the field. So we've got small stone settings, and they're spaced about 25 metres apart by 15, 16 metres. So we're looking for very small features, widely spaced, in a very large field.
If the gamble pays off and we are standing on top of Stukeley's Avenue, what would it have looked like when it was built? Archaeologists believe it would have been similar to the existing West Kennet Avenue.
Hi Dave, where is the existing avenue? Can you see that from where you are?
Oh yes, I mean it's very clear. Several stones, of course, down at the Avebury end. I can sort of get the impression of where it's going, because of course the bottom half's missing pretty much.
Stukeley described how the avenue was like the neck of a serpent, and at one end was the head, which he saw sort of stone circle. Can you see any evidence of that?
Well, I guess that's what he meant by the head. He meant the sanctuary, which is a stone circle, about 2.5 kilometres south of Avebury. So the avenue's, 2.5 kilometres long, basically. But it's a lovely, lovely site, lovely shape.
Stukeley's Avenue, the missing avenue, is there any evidence, can you see anything from up there where that might have ended?
Well, no, I'm afraid we can't.
It was all so frustrating. We couldn't see anything above the ground. Stukeley was right about the existence of another avenue as far as Adam and Eve. But he also said that it carried on beyond Adam and Eve, covering a huge stretch of landscape, cutting through the middle of the next field where the team are now digging. Now, I wanted to experience the existing avenue for myself. This is very much what Stukeley's Avenue must have actually looked like, marching across the landscape. From the stone circle itself, as pairs, it must have been the most impressive sight. It seems to be some form of processional way. Maybe this was as much part of the ritual of Avebury as the stone circle itself. But many of the stones are missing. In the 18th century, Stukeley witnessed the clearing of huge stones by local farmers. Some stones were simply buried, but others were turned into building stone by using fire, water and sheer brute force. In a unique experiment, we decided to find out just how difficult and dangerous a job this had been for the farmers.
Lynn Willis is an expert in stone breaking and fire setting, the ideal man to help us recreate an 18th century stone burning. Our experimental subject was a stone, not from the monument, on a local farm. These sarsen stones are common here and were used to build the monuments at Avebury. Our first step was to raise the stone before digging a fire pit underneath, but we had no idea how long the experiment would take, or even if it would work at all.
It must be about a ton or something.
2.5.
2.5?
Yeah.
How could we lift 2.5 tons?
The magic will emerge.
Joe, the last time I lifted a stone like this, it was actually an Egyptian tomb.
Oh, sure. Right, anyway, shall we get on with it?
Off we go.
Let's try it. 1, 2, 3, bams. Well, we're moving it.
Yeah.
That's as far as I can say.
No, we're never going to move
Yeah, only-
this. It's moved only a fraction of a millimetre.
It's a start. People around. Whoa!
Oh, excellent.
Wow!
Hang
Get
on.
your poles under.
Hang on.
Poles under. Yes, under the end.
Brilliant.
We're getting there.
God, it's a bit depressing. I must be heavier than this sarsen.
No, Joe, just physics.
Are you all sitting comfortably, as they say?
We're comfortable. We're a bit anxious about you.
I didn't ask for your benefit. It's whether you were going to let go any second.
No, we're not.
Can you relax on those bars?
The bars are Look at that. One perfectly raised stone.
All I can say is I'm glad we only had to move it a few inches off the ground, not
we
drag it all the way to Avebury.
I hitched a lift with Dave back to the dig to see what the top layer of chalk had revealed. Well, Mark, how do you think it's gone?
Not too bad. Now, what we think we've got in here are some areas where we may well have stone burials.
Oh, right, can we have a look? I say I can't see anything in this.
We know that they dug very deep holes, pushed the
Right.
stone in and then filled it back in again. So what we're looking for is exactly this kind of stuff that looks like it's been dug out and put back in.
Right.
And you get this crumbly kind of pastry feel to it. So it's slightly looser.
So this is a good find then.
Not a bad feature, yeah. It's not obvious visually, but you can feel it.
What
too.
else have we got then?
So if you stand here and have a look,
Right.
then about here, can you see it gets slightly darker?
Oh, yes. Yeah, I can see.
So again, it's dead
Right.
subtle. So
Yeah,
maybe we're seeing the fill of a pit.
Another stone pit?
Could be.
Could be.
I'm being
right.
cagey now, aren't
What do you
I?
think
It's like
about the distance
maybe.
between these two?
Bit too close.
You haven't really got much idea at the moment,
No.
other than a stone pit, of what these could be.
They're
Anything else?
enigmatic features.
Right, okay, so what next then?
Dig them up.
Back at our 18th century experiment, we were ready to build the fire pit.
Do we have to go all the way underneath?
Yes, the fire will go underneath, and then we want to try and get a sort of a flue here
Well, my
and a
base is
flue
up and it's
there
kind
to
of
bring
wide
it up.
and
Okay,
plastic
so
and
Joe and I
squirrely.
have to sort of hold hands underneath the stone, as it were.
If you so wish.
Shovel!
Got the shovel?
Yeah, I'm going to put my hands in, so...
Okay.
Yeah.
Hey!
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 You put me into the hole. That's pretty good then, isn't it? Oh, and there it goes.
Now, it's beginning to come through as a flue here now. You can see, oh, it's coming beautifully. The
Oh, let's
flames
have a
are
look.
coming through the flue. Yes, this is excellent.
Hey, that's really
it's
good.
absolutely shooting through, isn't it?
Yeah.
Exactly as you said it was going to do.
Put that one on
Can I
there.
have some more straw, please?
Woohoo! Mr. Bossy.
But William Stukeley was convinced he knew why the stones were erected in the first place. He's described it as a Druid's temple, and he clearly believed this was where Druids worshipped. We now know that Druids were 2,000 years after this place was constructed.
It could be religious, though, surely. I mean, the kind of effort that is represented by this is, I mean, it's actually on a much greater scale than anything that we see later on. But if you look at the great cathedrals, these are the things the buildings that we put so much effort into and have done in the past. I mean, you take here, we've got a lovely church down there, Avebury Church. A lot of effort has gone into that.
One of the really interesting ideas is that, in fact, this is a place for ancestors. The burials on the hills were then brought down here, that the stones themselves represent the ancestors.
Now, I like that theory, I must say. And if you look behind us on the West Kennet Avenue and you can see those beautiful, elegant stones, they are like people marching across the landscape, aren't they? So I could see those as being the ancestors. I like that one.
Well, I'm off to the West Kennet Long Barrow to actually see where the ancestors were originally put.
Right.
Just over a mile south of the Stone Circle lies one of the largest prehistoric burial chambers in the country. Josh took me there. Wow! Gosh, it's got chambers on both sides. Look, we've got a big chamber out at the end.
Yeah, it's incredible to think that you're standing inside a structure that was built almost 6,000 years ago.
What was actually found here?
Well, during the 1950s, when most of this monument was excavated, they discovered the remains of about 50 partial skeletons. They're the bodies in various states.
So bits and pieces.
Completeness, if you like, yes. Which tends to imply that perhaps whole bodies were brought in here, they were left to rot down, and then at a later date the bones were resorted, moved around.
What does that really tell us about the sort of society that built this monument?
It tends to suggest that it was a relatively undifferentiated or egalitarian social structure.
No great big king or whatever?
No big king, no great chiefs.
I mean, does that tell us something about Avebury as a monument?
Well, although this monument is slightly older than Avebury itself, we have the same kind of society probably in existence at the time when Avebury was constructed. So it does look very much like a communal construction rather than something that's being dictated by a paramount chief or leader. But people continued to visit this monument right up until the time when Avebury was constructed and used. And as one of the final acts, when eventually they decided that this monument should be closed, they deposited pottery vessels. This is a replica of an early Bronze Age beaker, which was found placed upside down just underneath one of the capstones over one of these chambers.
So this was a place, sort of like a cult for ancestors?
It's quite likely that they believed that their ancestors were spirits that were very effective in terms of the well-being of society, ensuring that the fertility of crops and the reproduction of animals and so forth. So the dead and ancestors were very important in the minds of these people.
Back at the dig site, I was horrified to see that the team were recovering their trench. Well, Mark, how come you're returfing? I'm a bit disappointed.
Yes. Yeah, there wasn't anything there.
Nothing there?
Not in the whole trench.
What, I mean,
no.
even the stuff that we thought we'd seen?
All of those featured. No, we had a scrabble around in those dark bands. I was getting all excited about them. They turned out to be about yay deep. So they just plough scrapes through.
So none of them? And
not
what
a
about
biscuit.
That is
No.
really disappointing, isn't it?
Mm.
Yeah. And a lot of hard work for nothing.
No. I just sat there looking at it thinking, why? There's nothing there.
So what are you going to say about Stukeley's Beckhampton Avenue at the moment?
What we're going to say, we know for sure it exists from Avebury as far as Adam and Eve. So we've proven that. We're happy with that. What we don't know for sure is what happens beyond Adam and Eve.
If Stukeley was right, then the avenue should be in this area. But so far our team have found no evidence of it. At least the stone burning experiment was giving us definite results. Can you see a huge crack developing? There's no doubt it's going to split when we...
It's going to work, is it?
It's definitely going to work, yeah.
I wonder how hot it is in there.
Somewhere we've got a good gadget, I think, for testing the temperature. You can go and see if you can find it. I'm sure someone will let you use it.
852 in the fire, 852. Let's look at the stone itself. 600 degrees, the very bottom there. Now we've got the temperature and it seems to be splitting. What do we do next?
One is to pull this aside, if it will, but I would also like to throw the water on the rock, which is the hazardous bit, but the exciting bit, to see whether it will induce any further cracks.
Wow!
Ooh, look at that.
Yes? Go put some more on.
Oh, there's the warm bit. see what you can demolish.
It just falls apart, doesn't it?
It does.
If it wasn't heated like this, the mallet would have just bounced straight off it.
Yes. Well, you can try the other end and see of it.
Let's just try the other end and see. That's a boring job, isn't it? I feel for those 18th century farmers. We found that making building stone out of solid sarsen was a sweltering, dangerous and exhausting job. But I wonder how many blocks would come out in total out of this stone?
Actually, quite a lot, and you'd get a fair old bit of wall if you were looking at a wall 3 foot high, wouldn't you, out of that?
Yeah.
Now some of it's in the houses. Today it would be unthinkable to destroy a prehistoric monument like Avebury. But in the 18th century, the locals were more concerned with keeping themselves dry and warm. There's no doubt the village has dramatically affected the circle at Avebury, but today we're getting closer to knowing how the complex once looked. Where do we think the line of the avenue goes at this point?
OK, the avenue begins at the western entrance to Avebury, runs down the line of the High Street, across the Winterbourne, round the top of Avebury Truslow, and then runs down towards Adam and Eve.
Right,
That's
that
right.
could actually be the end of that avenue.
Yes, I mean, that's quite possible.
I find this rather amusing because in some ways we found the avenue because of Stukeley.
Yes.
Right? In some ways we failed to find the rest of the avenue because of Stukeley as well. He sort of half got it right and half got it wrong. So William Stukeley.
Cheers. Thanks to the work of the archaeologists, we now know that 4,000 years ago there were actually 2 avenues running from the stone circle, with the second probably ending at Adam and Eve. It's likely the avenues were processional in some way. For the people who built these imposing monuments, passing through the towering chalky banks and entering the grandeur of the stone circle itself must have been an awe-inspiring moment. But exactly what the complex was for, we'll probably never know.
We found out a lot, but there's so much more to be discovered.
Discover why bad British taste is just a sign of the times at 9 tonight. Stay with us after the break here on UK TV Documentary for the story of Joseph Bazalgette, also known as London Sewer King.